we're still going to focus on slope. But this time, instead of focusing more on elasticity of demand, the slope of the demand line, or the inverse of the slope of the demand line, we're going to be focusing more on supply. So the second line, supply is the one that looks more like this. Oh, this is a bad marker. The one that has a positive correlation or positive slope. So as a summary from the last lesson, elasticity of demand, the more substitutes you have, the more elastic or flatter your demand lines become. So if you have a ton of substitutes, if you have a ton of substitutes, your demand line, which looks like this, will become flatter. Almost like this. If I just draw P and Q, price and quantity, our demand line will look flatter like this. The more substitutes you have, the flatter it becomes. However, if you have loyal customers, like when we're talking about the Apple fans, so those loyal hardcore Apple fans who wait in line for a week to get the next iPhone, through branding, you can make your line more inelastic. So although it may look like this now, if I had more loyal fans, it may look, I don't have a good eraser, it may look something closer to like this, more inelastic than the first line, which is just pretty much flat. So this one becomes more sleeper because of the loyal customers. So now we're going to be talking about the supply line. So it should be noted that the producer, you make your own supply line because you determine how much I want to make at what price. But that means that you have to figure out what's the best line to make. Because if you think about it, I can make 1,000 iPhones and sell them for a price of $1, but that doesn't mean I'll make profit. You want to be able to make sure that your supply line best suits the situation you're in. So to do that, you first need to figure out the slope of your supply line, which is why we're going over the elasticity of supply. Just a quick note, does anyone know how to go from elasticity to actual slope of a line? If it's the inverse, how would I go from elasticity to slope? Anyone? With the derivative. Alright, so to go from elasticity to slope, because it's an inverse, so I literally just flip elasticity. So 1 over elasticity, which is usually just E. So I just do 1 divided by elasticity, and that's how I get my slope. So that's just a quick note, just a quick reminder that elasticity and slope aren't the exact same thing. They're more inverses of each other, but it's easy to get to switch between them. So contrary to the elasticity of demand, which relies mostly on the amount of substitutes you have, the elasticity of supply relies on this is going to sound really weird at first, but I'll explain it, change of per product cost. Now that sounds really fancy, but it's much more simpler than you think. So with the per product cost, let's say I have a book, this book right here, and it costs $10 to make. $10 is the per product cost. It cost me $10 to make, so the cost per product is $10. Now I did say the change of per product cost. So let's say I want to make another book, and that other book also costs $10, like a second book. I don't have a second book on me, but so it costs $10 just like the first. There was no change, and because of that, if just imagine if every single book I ever made, my millionth book also cost $10, my trillionth book also cost $10, my supply line will look like this, which is called perfectly elastic, which is just literally a straight line, like this. Or it's perfectly flat, as I said. But what would change my per product cost? Why wouldn't my trillionth book cost $10? It would probably cost much more, but we'll get into that. So I'll ask you this first question. If I was able to make only 10 books a year from a horrible machine, I don't know, this printer or something like that, but I wanted to make 20, how would I do that? how would I go from making 10 books a year from this machine to 20 books a year? Yes, someone?
Buy a second machine.
Buy a second machine. How will I pay for that?
Using the money that you made from the first machine.
Would I have to raise the cost of my thing to cover it? Yeah. So that's the first question. Now here's the second situation, different from the first. Now just imagine I can make as many books as I want from this one machine. It's a magical machine. It can do everything, you know? It can make 1 trillion books, 1 billion books, whatever you name it.
So many books.
So many books. What would happen to the amount of trees in the world? What would happen to the amount of trees in the world if I decide to do that? Nina, you wanna tell me what would happen?
Most of the trees will disappear.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. So how would that affect the price of trees? If I'm running out of trees, do you think the price of trees would go up or go down? Go up, yeah. So now, if the price of trees started going up, and so wood is going up, how would that change the price of my product? If it no longer cost me $10 to make the product because the price of wood went, what would happen to the price of my own product, the cost of it?
It will increase. It will increase.
Yes, it would increase as well. And so you see that there's other factors that can change my per product cost, and that's what we make it at elasticity. So going over how inputs being like the machine, I needed that to make whatever I need to use to make my product, this book, whether it be workers or whether it be printers or whether it be wood, those are inputs, and they determine the effect on the per product cost. So in the case of the changing the amount of books from 10 to 20 per year, I had to buy more machines or a second hardware machine. And that meant I had to raise the prices of my product because I had to account for that extra cost that I'm now putting on. But I never said how much I would raise it. I don't know how much that second printer costs. It can cost $1 billion or it can cost $1. I don't know. But if I had to raise it by a lot, that meant that my curve was inelastic, looking something like this. Why is it inelastic? Well, the reason is this. Yeah, I might need that second marker. Oh shoot! Where did I throw that? Anything. Well, think about it like this. If it took 10 to go here, and let's say that cost $100, right? For that one printer, it costs $100, so I'm able to make 10. If I wanted to make 20, and it costs $200, the slope is pretty high. But let's say instead of it costing $100 for the next machine, let's say it only costs $1 more. Instead, my line will look something like this, more flatter, more elastic. So that's the difference. Now I'll be getting that into the next slide. So here's what inelastic one would be if I had to make, in order to make more, I had to raise prices by a lot. That's what it would look like. And if I had to raise it by a little, which was the second example I gave, the supply curve would be more elastic because I didn't have to change prices much to increase the amount I'm making. I didn't have to change it much. In this case, I only need to change it by $1 in order to make 10 extra per year. So as you can see in this example, a small increase of price from here to here allowed me to make much more, from 50 to 80. You guys can't read it, but that's what it says. Now, let's move on to that second scenario, okay? About the insane productions of millions of books, or trillions of books, or billions of books, whatever you want. Now, when I ended up doing that, I ended up increasing the price of one of my inputs, which was wood, in order to make the actual papers of the book. Since there was more demand for wood, I'm fighting over the same supply of wood, without more trees being cut down. People sometimes will cut down more trees to match the amount of wood that people want, but that's what's known, if you guys remember, as a sorted. Now, that meant that I also had to increase my price since the per product cost went up. Because the cost of wood went up, I had to increase the price of my book because it was one of the costs that I attached to it. Once again, I never told you how much I had to increase it by. If I had to increase it by a lot to make more books, my product is inelastic. Going back to that first example, if I had to increase it from 100 to 200, it would look something like this, inelastic. But if I had to increase it from 100 to 101, it would be elastic. So, as a summary, and this is probably the most important part because it's just a wrap up more or less. If in order to make more products, my price has to go up by a lot, my supply line is inelastic. And if prices have to go up by little, it is elastic. So this is more of a practice problem. What do you think is more elastic? Beachfront properties or toothpicks? Do you guys know how to solve this problem? I'll take it step by step. Yes, Amar?
Toothpicks?
Why would you say toothpicks?
Well, remember, so elastic is like the price stays the same. So toothpicks, I mean, like you generally won't see the price fluctuating a lot. Like, let's say $1 for 100 packs to $2 for 100 packs. Let's say beachfront houses, as it becomes more expensive to get materials to build them and to sell them, that price is gonna inflate a lot.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why. So if we think about it, Nina or Shuya, do you guys have any? Do you guys want to add to this? You agree? Good job. So let's think about beachfront property. So beachfront property, there's only a limited amount. So that means like, just imagine there's only 100 in the world. There's only 100 beachfront properties in the world. If I wanted to like increase the amount of beachfront properties in the world, it would cost a lot of money to do so. I would have to, like you say, build more property or build more like wood and all that kind of stuff. And that would drive up prices like crazy. Unlike toothpicks, if I wanted to make one more toothpick, it wouldn't cost that much. It wouldn't increase it by a lot, unlike beachfront property. That's why toothpicks are much more elastic. Toothpicks actually has one of the flattest elastic curves because, I mean, it doesn't cost that much. You're not taking up as much resources by using toothpicks. Unlike beachfront property, which is like crazy high with, this is also dead, with, you guys can't see that, but if you could, it looks something like that. So this would be the beachfront, while this would be the toothpicks. Is there any questions you guys have about this? Like, if anything you guys are confused about, I'll talk about it.
Yeah, don't be afraid to speak up if you said anything stupid.
Do you guys understand? Yeah, you understand? You understand? Nina?
I understand.
Cool. You understand? Alright. Just a quick question. Do you guys remember what elasticity of demand, this is supply, what elasticity of demand relies on? Yes, Amar?
What the consumers want?
Huh?
What the consumers want?
Not necessarily. There was one thing, it starts with an S.
Supply.
Subs.
Oh, substantive.
Yeah. Elasticity of demand relies on substitutes. What did I say? What was that complicated thing? I'll call it terminology that I use to determine elasticity of supply. That per. What did you say?
Cost per product.
Yeah, cost per product or per product cost. So when it comes to elasticity of demand, it relies on how many substitutes I have. More substitutes, more flatter it would be. When it comes to elasticity of supply, if the change of per product cost is great, like from 100 to 200 to make like 10 more books, it will be inelastic. If I go from 100 to 101, to make the same 200, to make the same 20, it will be elastic. So that's how we're gonna help determine the slope, which we would be doing in the next part of this. Yeah, that's it.
That's all.
Yeah.
Good job, Devin. All right. So,
Trying to